Hi, everyone. This is Krista, and welcome to Kratom Sobriety. This is episode 16, and this week's interview is with Fritz. Fritz is a retired attorney who has battled Kratom since 2017, when he was introduced to it as something to help with energy and motivation. Fritz suffered adverse cardiovascular effects that he covers in the interview. He has now maintained over 7 months of sobriety from Kratom and employs a recovery program influenced by various 12-step fellowships, Kratom support groups, positive lifestyle choices, and spiritual practices. Today we're doing something a little different. Charlie is taking a much-deserved break this week, and I have Jacob, who shared his story on episode 11, here with me to co-host. How are things going in your world right now, Jacob?
They're going great, Krista. Thanks for having me back. It's good to meet you, and excited to have a little discussion here with you. So yeah, things have been good ever since my podcast a couple weeks ago. Still, maintaining sobriety and doing well. So I'm happy about that.
Good, awesome. Today, Jacob and I are going to discuss for a few minutes, ways that Kratom addiction is similar to and ways it differs from other substance addictions. A couple things that I was thinking, the dependency that starts with Kratom and other substances, other opioids especially, becoming physically dependent on a substance.
Yeah, very, very similar for me with alcohol, opiates, kratom. They all end up there if you take them far enough.
Right, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of one of the things I noticed too with my kratom addiction was a lot of obsessive thinking about it, preoccupation. So it was physical dependence, but it was psychological and in my head, thinking about when I was going to dose again. And what I mean?
Yeah. I had the same experience. It totally takes over your thought process, and you just hone in on when it's been 3 hours. How much longer do I have to wait? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I know everybody, experiences is the fun joys of tolerance. That blew me away with kratom addiction. I mean, I was I couldn't believe how quickly I built up such a high tolerance.
Oh, same with me. It went through the roof, and it was rather quickly. It was within a couple months. It was started at 10 to 15 grams, and then before you know it, you're at 50, 100. It was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's because, in Florida here, there's so many kava bars. You know exactly if you're drinking a beverage, for example, say I'm drinking a nitro, they have those nitro brews or a tea, you never knew what was even in it, how many grams. It's sometimes I would start the day and feel it. Sometimes I wouldn't even feel it at all.
Too, I only started on the powder for a little bit. Well, the first year before I actually got addicted, and then when I found the extracts, that's when it really went to problems. But I didn't know at first. It wasn't until I Googled it to see how much was actually in there, and then I was like, wow, that is an astronomical amount of kratom that I never even thought about.
Another thing it has in common, the withdrawal symptoms, very similar to an opiate withdrawal to me. It might be a little milder in some ways. Crazy issues at night, feeling the restless legs, tingling. I felt like I could feel the nerves in my arms and legs.
Yeah, for me too. I was a chronic relapser, and I went through that so many times. I talked about this a little bit in the episode I was on, but for me, even it was a little bit stronger than an opiate. But I think that was more because of the mental aspect paired with the physical. But it has all those characteristics, and I've gone through alcohol withdrawal too, and I never drank 24/7, so I would say it was worse. Kratom was definitely a little worse for me, but
the anxiety and just the depression, I felt all the dopamine in my brain was just,
it was hard. You couldn't even get it back to normal. It took a long time. Other couple things that I found very similar to being a polysubstance addict to other things were impact on relationships. So I think just like alcohol, opiates, stimulants, and really any substance, if you use it to excess, you start to put it in front of friends and family. I isolated a lot, spent way more money than I care to admit on it. It was a point of friction as well. So for me, that was a similarity. I don't know if you had that experience. I think you mentioned with the kava bars and stuff, they get pretty expensive too.
Oh yeah, it was unreal. I mean, I probably could have I mean, you're talking about like what it cost me to pay for an apartment. I was spending
Yeah,
probably more
same,
than that
same.
every month. I mean, it's like I think about it, and it makes me just retch. How expensive it is. I mean, actually, it's almost like worse. I mean, I don't know, between the tolerance, the dependence, the price of it, just get into this vicious cycle.
It is definitely a vicious cycle. And I think the last thing is health risks. Some of this is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this is downplayed, particularly from the pro kratom community. But for me, I had a lot of mental health problems. I know some people have reported liver damage. There's been reports of heavy metal toxicity, seizures, all kinds of different things. And like any other substance, when you use it to excess, there can be health risk, both physical and mental. So I think that's very similar.
I mean, it was like last week's episode, we had a couple of things on there about like the seizures.
There's like this prevailing viewpoint from the pro community, and sometimes even the just in general, that like, oh, if someone's had a seizure or had those effects, or even the deaths that have been attributed to it, that it's just one of many things that's in their system, or they were addicted to other things too, or using other things. And there's been some cases where all they've found is just the active ingredients in kratom. So
Absolutely, like cardiotoxicity and the adverse cardiovascular effects.
oh
So like,
wow.
there's some stuff like that going on. I mean, health risk is definitely real. Just so concerning because we don't really know enough about
Yeah,
what's
we're
going on.
guinea pigs. I mean,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
people say, well, it's been used for thousands of years in Southeast Asia. And it's like, yeah, but they're taking a leaf or two and putting it in tea. They're not taking 30 to 100 grams a day.
Exactly. Every day for like 4 years.
Years. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
We should talk
too.
about some of the differences. The mechanism of interaction, right?
Mhm.
The main thing that's getting you going with kratom is obviously the interaction on the opioid receptors, particularly the mu opioid receptors. The difference with kratom is it's not just that. There's like 25. I've heard anywhere from 25 to 40 different alkaloids in there, and I've also heard people say that it's very similar to tramadol. I don't know if I've only ever taken that once after postoperative surgery, when I was stepping down from a harder opiate that they had me on to. I had some shoulder surgery a couple years ago. But anyways, I found that was the most similar in effect. So it has this like SSRI component to it. So it can really feel like coming off multiple things at once, which I think is why it can be difficult for people, or one of the many reasons why. I think some of the other differences are like legal status, right? So kratom
Mhm.
in a lot of places is legal. I think there's some states that it's not, and then I know there's countries obviously that it's not legal in a few others across the globe.
I feel like too, our whole treatment surrounding kratom, I feel like is different than treatment programs, detox programs, admitted for opioids or for, whatever, and the protocols exist for that. I feel like kratom is a little bit newer, like knowing.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like when I went to my primary care doctor, she didn't really have any idea, and then I went to a telehealth addiction provider service, and the doctor there was familiar with it, but she had mentioned, she's treating quite a few people for it, but it's relatively new, and they use very similar protocols to opiates, but there's a pretty decent difference there. It's perception that it's like natural and safe, and that perception is not true in my opinion. I'll just come out and say it. And then I think there's also a stigma towards people that are like saying we had this experience. Like I know Charlie mentions that a lot. I've kind of felt it too. If you go on the just kratom subreddit, not the quitting kratom subreddit, you'll get a lot of people saying, well, that's just, you're just an addict, or of course you use these crazy amounts, and it's harmless. I've never had any withdrawals. I've taken it for 10 years, blah, 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 all this nonsense. So it's like, I think you're kind of stigmatizing us a bit.
I think not that, I mean, alcohol is readily available, obviously, like here, when I go to the gas station, when I go to smoke shops, the kava bars, just about anywhere, I mean, they're selling capsules or powder or, whatever. So I feel like it's highly accessible, becoming more and more so online. There's
Yeah.
ways to get it. I mean, so get alcohol and drugs anywhere, obviously. I mean, you can always find what you need
Yes.
to find, but I feel like the convenience stores and the gas stations, it's just like right there, or like extract shots right beside 5-hour energy drinks.
It seems almost deceptive in a way there. Here in Maine and in New England in general, it hasn't yet made it to the gas stations yet, but it's
Yeah.
everywhere in all the smoke shops and head shops and signs all over the road when you
Yes.
drive by places. So only super, super accessible. The last real difference for me, and this was like the weirdest one, was that like with my experience with a lot of other drugs like alcohol or harder opiates, etc., kratom like really doesn't cause you to black out or nod out. Like I could take a huge amount and maybe I'd get a little sleepy or get nauseous. That was mostly what happened, to get nauseous, get the wobbles and have to go lay down. But it never like I could take and go to work and be fine. I never had any like worry about being functional, if you will. Now looking back in hindsight, I wasn't obviously functioning as well as someone that wasn't on kratom, but it kind of, you feel like you are, and you feel like it's maybe this isn't so bad because it's not really, causing me to black out. I'm not forgetting what I did the night before. I'm not, making a scene. I'm not nodding out or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's a very strange substance in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I maintained it for quite some time, and I mean, the very fact that it's kind of marketed to help, have a stimulant effect in low
Yeah.
doses, like to help you do this or that, and then in maybe higher doses, it has an analgesic or pain relieving effect. Like
Yeah.
it's marketed to like help you with whatever you're trying
Whatever
to
ails
treat.
you. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it is. It's a slow roll. It's very subtle. It's like, I don't know, it took a while for me to get to the point where I was like,
It really took a long time, whereas like, alcohol did too, but the progression was a lot
yeah. I,
slower, I think.
I had a lot of consequences with alcohol. I
Oh,
mean,
me
like I
too.
had
Me
legal
too.
consequences, and I mean that's another thing with kratom. I didn't get arrested. I didn't lose my
Nope.
job. I didn't get kicked out of my house. I mean, like I had financial and all kind, emotional.
Yeah.
Kept the same job. I was, you could rationalize much easier that I'm functional, than when I've
Yeah,
used
I think
narcotics
that's
in the past or when I've really been on an alcohol bender. You know what I mean? It's harder to justify that those are, you're doing as okay as on kratom.
yeah, 100%. Like I got to the point with alcohol. I had the similar experience with alcohol, but I got to the point where like I know for a fact like if I go out and drink again, it's going to end poorly, most likely probably death or God only knows what. But with kratom, it never really got to that point. It just was its own terrible hell in a different way.
Yes. I know the word that comes up with it a lot. I've heard like I mean, on the podcast and just in some of the groups and stuff is anguish. I love that. Like mental and
Yeah.
physical anguish. I feel like anguish is such a perfect description for it.
I agree 100%. Yeah, it's a very, very good term for what
Yeah.
happens. There's lots of differences, lots of similarities.
We'll go ahead and move on to the interview of the episode. Hi, this is Krista, and today's interview is with Fritz. Fritz, let's start off today by having you tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi, Krista. Yeah, my name is Fritz, and I'm a recovering kratom addict, and I'm 62 years old. I'm an attorney, and I ran my own law firm since 1998. I'm retired. I just retired this year in June of 2023. I live in St. Louis, Missouri with my wife, and we've been happily married for 34 years. I have 2 adult children who are successful. I enjoy exercising, lifting weights, swimming, and spending time with my wife and our mini golden doodle. I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict. I currently work a 12-step program. I attend AA, CMA, and Al-Anon meetings. I have 2 sponsors, and I also sponsor people in the programs.
Okay, excellent. What is your Kratom abstinence date, Fritz?
Yes, my kratom abstinence date is January 3, 2023, a little over
Okay.
7 months.
Yeah, right on. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was your first exposure to Kratom, and how did tell us a little bit about that? How did that go for you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Krista. Yeah, my first exposure to kratom was in 2017. I had been struggling to get off of crystal methamphetamine for a number of years and kept relapsing. And I was having real problems with motivation, energy. And I was trying to keep my law practice running. So I went into a kratom store in the fall of 2017 and was looking for a way to increase my energy and bought some kratom. They suggested I take 5 grams to start, and it was powder. And I started off with the 5 grams. It didn't really do anything, then quickly went up to 10 grams and then noticed some boost in my energy and motivation. I do have a history of struggling with other substances. My family also has a history of alcoholism. My mother's an alcoholic, and I went into rehab to try to get off of crystal meth in 2013 and stayed off of it for a year or so. And then I relapsed and kept relapsing up until 2017. And that's when I found kratom. It did help me for a while, but then it stopped helping me. I've not used any methamphetamine since September 14, 2017, and I've been completely clean and sober since January 3, 2023.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I found kratom myself, I never was educated about like the lower strength for stimulant properties. Like I kind of went like straight to getting more sedative effects. I never really knew about that. That's interesting. When I finally found out about that, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize. Like it's big in the kava bars to have like the white strain, the red strain, and the green strain, and they say like one is red is for like pain relief, and white is euphoric, and or green is euphoric, and white is like stimulant. But
Yep.
I don't know, I always wondered like, was there any truth to that whole thing, or
I always bought the white strain, always white strain. I was
yeah,
always
I
looking
always
for
bought the
stimulant.
red.
Yeah. So and it did help, but over time it gradually did not help any, and actually had the opposite effect where I would just get exhausted so quickly, and I would have to keep using the kratom just to get back to any level of energy whatsoever.
When did kratom start to become a problem for you? Would you?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I didn't really notice kratom. It is had such a slow and subtle effect on me that I didn't really notice it. But what I first noticed was about 2 years after I had started using it, I went on vacation with my family down to Myrtle Beach, and I ran out of kratom. And I didn't think it was going to be any big deal until I tried to go to sleep at night. And then my legs, I started just having restless legs and involuntary limb movements. Oh my gosh. And so the next morning I woke up and I said, well, I'm going to the gym. And I ran off. I Googled a local kratom store and went and bought some. And then I thought, oh my God, this is something that I've got to stop, because when I don't use it, it has all of these horrible withdrawal effects.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point forward, I started realizing that my kratom use had escalated to like 30 grams a day or more. I really didn't keep track of it, Krista. I would just gulp all this powder, and I'd even buy these little oblate discs, which are like little wafers, and then wrap it up in that and then drink it down. I would use it multiple times each day. I ended up buying kilos of powder over the internet, and I was buying like a kilo every month and a half, sometimes toward the end, like every month. So it was an incredible amount. My sleep started getting disrupted. It was so bad at the end that I would sleep for like 2 hours, then I'd wake up and have to use kratom again because my legs would start moving around, and I just couldn't sleep or get comfortable. I decided to quit in 2022. What happened was in May of 2022, my wife intercepted my kilo of kratom. All this time I'm keeping a secret of my use. I'm sponsoring guys in AA. I'm working the steps with them, but I realized there's this problem with kratom that I really have not addressed, and I've not told anybody in my recovery community about it. I haven't told my wife. And so she intercepted the kratom and she was like, what in the hell is this? You've been lying to everyone about your use. You've been saying you've been sober. You've lied to me. You've lied to our family. You shouldn't be sponsoring people. You know, you need to get off this stuff now. So I told her, okay, I'm going to taper off of this. I had been seeing a psychiatrist for addiction who's got a specialty in addiction counseling. And he, I did not tell him about it until after my wife intercepted my packages. And when I told him I was using kratom, he said, oh my God. He said, do you want to quit? And I said, yes, I definitely want to quit. And he said, it's like using a benzo. Your withdrawals are going to be like withdrawing from an opiate, a benzo, and a stimulant at the same time. He only had one patient of his who tried to get off kratom, and he said he went into inpatient detox and threw and punched a hole in the wall and then discharged himself. And he said, I haven't seen him since. So he suggested I try to taper, and I tried to taper from May of 2022 until December of 2022. And it was crazy. I mean, it was, I failed at numerous attempts at that. So
you tried tapering for a while and it didn't really work for you?
I got to it. I can't say it didn't work because I don't know what my withdrawals would have been like if I just tried to come off of the 30 grams a day right down to nothing. So I would go down, I'd gradually decrease my dosage, and I'd get down to like 13 grams a day. And then something would happen in my life where I'd get stressed or something was going on with my job. And then I would justify to myself that I would use just a little bit more just for today. I would do that. And then I would gradually escalate back up to 25 or 30 grams, and then they start coming down again.
No, you're okay. I mean, the progression of kratom, I think, is, it's alarming. I mean, how much it's similar to like other, heavier quote unquote drugs or it just kind of blows me away. And just listening to you when you said that it wasn't while you were using it that you realized it was completely out of control, because it is slow and it is subtle. It was more the absence of having it when the withdrawals kicked in, and you, like, why I was able to maintain a few years, because with substances in my past that, narcotics, I couldn't maintain that amount of time. But with kratom, I mean, I could go to work, I could do this, I could do that. I mean, I thought I was functioning. Obviously, now I look back and I realize I wasn't very well.
In December of 2022, when my wife told me, she said, you're done with this taper. You need to stop right now or you're out. And she said, I cannot continue to live with you the way you are. And I thought, what is wrong with the way I am? I mean, I thought I was doing fine. And she's, and she said, you don't travel. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to join me for activities. You're just not the same person. And I thought, oh my God, I had no idea. But when I thought about it, and after I quit, I realized all of my interests were just narrowing down to just, when was I going to get kratom? How long was how much more did I need to take that day? If we were ever going to travel anywhere, I had to make sure I had bags of it hidden in the wheel wells of the car. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was just craziness. But all my life, it was just controlled by my kratom usage, and I didn't even realize it. She insisted I quit, and then I quit on December. My last day was January 2, 2023, and then I went into withdrawals January 3rd, and oh my God, it was just horrible. I could not believe how bad the withdrawals were. I laid in bed. I laid in bed. I had uncontrollable limb movements, and I had severe pain. The pain was so bad, Krista, that I could actually feel it in my bones. I'd been through some shit in my life, and I had been through surgeries, and I went through a meth withdrawal. This was so bad. I thought, I still think I would rather have both my arms broken than go through that kratom withdrawal again. And I didn't sleep for a week and a half. My heart went into tachycardia, where it was just racing, and then it would just flutter. I couldn't sleep. And then I was just miserable. I had severe depression, anxiety. It was unbelievable.
Experienced a lot of that. I felt like I could feel the nerves in my arms and my legs, the restlessness. I mean, it was, the nights were, I could kind of get through the day, but the nights were the worst for me. It's pretty
Same
brutal
here.
withdrawal for what you get out of it when you think about it. So the heart problems, it caused some heart problems for you?
I'd been using for a number of years. And in 2018, I was jogging and, I like to exercise, and I was jogging. And then all of a sudden I just felt like I was going to pass out. And I thought, oh, I'm just pushing myself too hard. And then I would get on the spinning bike and something similar would happen where I would really be exerting myself. And then all of a sudden I just felt like I was dizzy and I was going to pass out. I thought, well, I'm just getting old. So I didn't think anything of it until I went to see my primary care physician, and he took my pulse and he said, do you feel okay? And I said, yeah, I feel okay. Well, I had gone into a atrial flutter, which is an arrhythmia. So I had an irregular heartbeat. I didn't associate it with the kratom use at all. Cardioverted me, which is they shock your heart back into regular rhythm. And it went back into regular rhythm for a while. But as my usage increased with my kratom, my heart kept going back into arrhythmia. And then when I quit, like I said, I went into tachycardia, and I was, and I called my cardiologist, and he said, you're going to need an ablation procedure, and we're not going to do it until you've been off this stuff for a while. I went on PubMed, and there's an article that I had sent to you earlier that talks about the cardiotoxicity and the effects that kratom has on your heart. And I had no idea, but it affected my heart. And actually, I now suffer from a degree of heart failure as a result of that. Fortunately, the ablation procedure got me back into regular rhythm, but I'm still on heart medication because of it. But there's so many things that are unknown about kratom, and the medical community is just finding out, just like that article that I'd sent you about how kratom, the effects it has on your heart and other organs and other organ systems. I had no idea about. I had no idea about until I experienced it myself.
There's different ways of, using kratom too. I feel like I was using powder for a while, and I always wondered, I mixed mine in lemonade and just drank it. It was very, chalky and awful, but I always wondered, how did the organs even break that down? Versus a brewed tea versus a capsule versus, a shot or an extract.
The kratom industry is making money hand over fist, and it really is an unregulated industry. And here you've got an addictive drug that they don't have to advertise as an addictive drug. People are just like me going in there and buying it. And the next thing you know, they're addicted. They can't stop. Bought it online. They give me discounts. They send me extra. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these bonuses.
Yeah.
I'm a gold member, and I didn't even sign up to be a gold member.
Right. And it's an herbal supplement. It's safe,
It's a pre-workout.
You tried the taper. You went cold turkey, once your wife. Did you use any medication at any point?
Yes, I did. I used medication and was prescribed by my psychiatrist. He suggested that I might need to be on Suboxone, but I asked him to see if we could avoid that because it's addictive, and I didn't want to fall into becoming addicted to another substance. So what he prescribed was clonidine, which helped with my anxiety and helped with my sleep. Ropinirole, which helped with my restless legs, and gabapentin, which also helped with my restless legs. Some trazodone to help me sleep. And so that really helped me. And I continue to take the clonidine and the gabapentin regularly. He also informed me that I was going to be in post-acute withdrawal syndrome for a couple of years. And so I still experienced some tension and some anxiety, but it's not anything like it was. It kind of comes and goes. It'll show up sometimes unexpectedly. And I still think I do have some depression symptoms from it, but I continue to improve, and I'm hoping that gradually I'll be able to get off of those meds. So I did use and I continue to use medication-assisted treatment, and it helps me. Mm-hmm. I was in the 12-step community, and the thing that really helped me in quitting and staying quit like I am right now is those 12-step meetings. And, I'm in AA, I'm also in Crystal Meth Anonymous, and I'm also in Al-Anon. And so I knew that when I quit kratom, the 12 steps, working the 12 steps, and I'm talking about working them, going to meetings, having a sponsor, doing the prayer and meditation, it got me through the crystal meth addiction. And if it could get me beyond that, it could get me beyond the kratom addiction. And one thing that really helped me in the 12-step meetings was I belong to a group that it's their tradition at the beginning of the meeting for everyone to go around the room and say their sobriety date. In May of 2022, when I confessed that I'd been addicted to Kratom, I no longer had a sobriety date. So I would say, my name is Fritz and I have a desire to stop using. And every week I would attend that meeting and say, my name is Fritz and I had a desire to stop using. And it was that being honest, being accepted, being encouraged by the group, and also recognizing that when I'd said that I had a desire and that I was making my way toward quitting. And when I first announced my sobriety date, the whole room was a round of applause for me. And it's just, it's just a great experience. And I'd gone to a number of meetings when I was just totally miserable in my first 30 and 60 days, 90 days. And I would share about how miserable I felt. And I would tell them I had been using Kratom, and I received nothing but understanding and support from the people in those rooms and encouragement. And I don't think I could have done it without them. And of course, I also, as you know, attend a quitting Kratom support and awareness group that meets on via Zoom on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And those people understand what Kratom is. And, Kratom is a different drug, as, most of the drugs of abuse are, but it is really unusual. And there's not a Kratom Anonymous. There's no 12-step in it. So although I'm a avid believer and an individual who recovered from, hopeless state of mind, body, and spirit through the 12 steps, there are a lot of people that have never heard of it and never gone through the 12 steps and don't know that as a solution. But, in the Quitting Kratom support group, we also learned that, and I learned through the subreddit and the other people in this group, the Quitting Kratom support group, is that there's kind of a mind-body connection that isn't talked about in the 12 steps. And so we talk a lot about exercise and the importance of exercise and the importance of getting out and doing things, even though Kratom withdrawal makes you want to just lay in bed all day. Changing your habits to create good habits, good nutrition, good sleep, exercise, connection with other people. Those are important aspects of recovering from Kratom addiction. My home group was Crystal Meth Anonymous. And so I had been not honest with them, and I'd been, representing that I'd been sober. And I announced at the meeting that I had been using Kratom, and this was again in May of 2022 after my wife had found my kilo, and I understood and accepted and encouraged. And they said, even though it's a Crystal Meth Anonymous meeting, it was like, well, glad you're here. Just keep coming back and keep work, and encouraging me to stay with it. And I got my 30-day coin again and my 60-day coin again, and each time I was, supported and applauded, because anybody that's experienced addiction and knows what it's like to be an addict knows that it's a disease, folks. It's not, nobody wants this. Nobody wants it. And so anytime that we get any recovery, we applaud each other and encourage each other, because it is a cunning, baffling, and powerful disease, and it will destroy you. So it really was helpful to have not only that group, but the other group with the announcing the sobriety dates.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm glad you had such a good experience. I'm a 12-step person too. I mean, I have a sponsor, work the steps. I did a lot of the same things. I was coming in and out of my home group for a couple of years using Kratom off and on. And I've, picked up chips over it, and I'm fortunate, I've even shared openly that what I was struggling with, you know what I mean? And they've been really supportive. I've had a positive experience with, AA, at least for me. So glad to hear.
Yeah.
And I like that you use the different things. You've got like the Quitting Kratom support group. I see you on the WhatsApp thread,
Yep.
saw you at the Wednesday night meeting a couple weeks ago. You've got your 12-step, programs. Then you're talking about, like exercise. I mean, it's like a holistic, viewpoint to, there's no one way that anybody has to do this, or there's no one thing that works. I think a little bit of this and a little bit of that, especially because it's Kratom and it's not identified specifically in any way in any program, really. I think that helps a lot. So
and I use it all, and I need it all. It's prayer, the meditation. The daily meditation is just where I just quiet my mind and sit still, and for 20 minutes just focus on my breath and watch those crazy thoughts come in and out. And it's amazing, because when you do your meditation, you may not feel the results or the benefits immediately after the meditation, but I notice it later in the day, even that things will arise in my day-to-day life where it can be really annoying and frustrating. And instead of reacting with anger and frustration, I can just be the observer, and I don't have to react to it. I can take a more calm approach. And that was not true when I was on Kratom. I had some instances of rage that were just awful. Of course, you're under constant stress with having to use Kratom every few hours, and what it does to your body and mind, it's horrible. So I'm glad those days are past.
Absolutely. And it's so good to hear how well you're doing at 7 months. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not like this takes 10 years of recovery, you know what I mean?
No.
To feel, relief.
No.
So, what was that like? When do you think you started kind of feeling like, oh, wow?
It took a while. It was like it was beyond 90 days. And then it just gradually improved after that. So I'd say at about 120 days. And then at the 6-month mark, I really was like, wow, this is my life has improved dramatically. And so in June, which was just after, it was close to my 6th month even, because that wouldn't have been until July 3rd. We took a trip to Pennsylvania to visit my folks. We drove there. And we stopped in Columbus, Ohio. And then on the way back, my wife and I drove down to Savannah, Georgia, and then to Jekyll Island, Georgia. And then coming back, we stopped in Chattanooga and then drove back to St. Louis. And it was just great. I didn't have to worry about packing Kratom or running out of Kratom or not being able to sleep or, having all these issues of just being dead tired and what's wrong with you? Why are you so low? And I didn't have any of that. And then we flew up to Seattle to visit my son. Had a wonderful time, and then took a trip down to Arkansas. And, it's just an amazing thing. Those things that I told you about before were the narrowing of interests. Now we've actually, my nephew's getting married in the fall. And we've got another friend whose son is getting married in December. And I said to my wife, why don't we take some dance lessons? Instead of just doing the box dance, why don't we, learn some different things? So we've been taking dance lessons. A friend of mine who's also in the program has a dance studio. It's not easy, but it's been a treat. And I'm looking forward to, getting those weddings and doing a few steps out there on the floor and, doing a little twirl action with my wife. And it also builds our relationship. And, to be able to go on these trips with her and enjoy each other's company and really enjoy life, it's just been like night and day. Krista really has. And I'm very grateful for that.
Sounds like you have a lot of freedom today. That's what I'm kind of hearing, like the narrowing of how life was and how expansive it is now with everything you're doing. I think that's amazing.
It really is.
Brings a lot of hope, to anybody listening about the change that can happen. It's definitely worth quitting.
It's crazy, and looking back on it, it's like, why did I wait so long? But, there's this thing in my mind that was like, oh, I can't go through those withdrawals right now. I've got something coming up. There's this coming, there's something that we got this planned or that planned, or I've got this at work I got to do. So I can't do it now. God, if I would have just bitten the bullet and just taken the time I needed to stop it back then, it probably would have been a lot easier to get off of it. And B, I would have had all that time that I could have been enjoying my life instead of struggling and lying and the fear associated with being found out. I'd think about, well, what if I ended up in the hospital and they needed to keep me there? And I was, then I'm going to go through Kratom withdrawals. My God, then what? And then what if something happened to me and my wife comes into my room and, I've got bags of Kratom hidden all over the place. And here it's, this guy that she thought she knew and loved for years has now been lying to her the whole time. It just eats up your self-respect and your self-esteem. And you tell yourself over and over, I'm going to quit tomorrow. I'm going to quit today. This is the last day. This is all I'm going to take. And then it doesn't happen. And then you keep using. And then you tell everybody I'm going to quit. And then you don't. And it's just, if you had a friend that told you they were going to do something and over again, they lied to you like that, you'd kind of lose faith in them. And what's worse about it is you actually lose faith in yourself. Mm-hmm. And so anybody that's struggling with it out now, now I say, just take that step. Just do what you can to quit and just keep trying and get whatever support you need. If it's in the groups, if it's in the 12-step meetings, if it's in, whatever group you join, or even joining us at the Quitting Kratom support group, we're here to help you and do whatever you can, because you may not, if you're anything like me, you may not realize the damage that you're doing to yourself. And there's just a whole new world out there waiting for you to really learn and explore and experience. My wife said when she encouraged me to quit, and she's kind of the unsung hero in my life, she said, I hope this is it for you. And if you get clean and sober, I think the whole sky will open up for you. And you'll realize just how beautiful you really are. I won't forget that. I get emotional even saying it now, because I think that's something that everyone has an opportunity to enjoy if they can just get off of Kratom, and they will see it just as I've seen it in my life.
You know what I mean? There's probably not going to be a right time or planning for it or this or that. I mean, we just got to make a decision and do it. But
well, you know it. And that's why I'm here. I wouldn't be doing this if my life hadn't changed dramatically. I wouldn't be encouraging others. And if I didn't have a realization of how difficult it is to really stop. But once you stop and you get past those things, and what helped me in those early days of withdrawal is just the realization that I had to suffer through this. And for me, it was severe mental and physical anguish. And I just had to suffer through it. And I wasn't going to try to avoid it or go take another substance to get around it. It was just something I had to live through and work through. But once you do that and accept it, it does get better. It takes a while, but after the initial 2 weeks, I started feeling better. And then gradually you start feeling better, and it just is gradual. But once you get past that 60-90 day mark, wow. You're like, why didn't I do this before? Because now I see the damage it was done. Now I see how the opportunities in my life were passing me by, and I didn't even recognize it. And the relationships, how can I have a loving and caring relationship with somebody when I'm not honest with them? And how can I do that even with myself? So my best advice to anybody is to do it now. Do it right now. Just get off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I feel like, the amount of time I was on Kratom versus the amount of time I've abstained from Kratom are not the same. You know what I mean? Like, the body repairs itself much quicker than sometimes the amount of time that we were out there using.
And, and I wasn't afraid to get medical help either. I think the medical community understands that addiction we're in the United States, for crying out loud. You don't think they recognize that addiction is a problem for people? Yeah. And there are treatment options for people that have the addiction. So, and the literature is growing. If you look at the PubMed website, you'll see that the literature in the medical community has grown rapidly from where it was just a few years ago. And it continues to grow because there are more and more incidents of people showing up in emergency rooms and in hospitals because of this drug.
I think the one thing I just hear when you're talking is like, this is a safe herbal supplement to be used for a little bit of energy or pain relief. This is characteristic. This Kratom has the characteristics of alcohol, drugs, anything else out there narcotic wise. You know what I mean? Like people get to that point. The same way I was when I wasn't doing activities unless I could drink while I was doing them, or before or after them, or whatever with drugs, the narrowing of your life, like everything you said, Fritz, is like characteristic, progression, tolerance, all of it, so I'm glad this podcast, is going on. I'm glad people are coming on and sharing their stories. I'm glad, the groups exist so we can, get some education out there and get people to share their experiences, because this is just definitely not being sold for truth.
No, it's a huge lie, and like many things in our society, it's
Yep.
you see is, and I think of it similar to booze. Some people can drink. My wife she can have a glass of wine or two and stop, and with no consequences. But that kratom, if when you start using it day in and day out, and over a period of time, you become addicted to it, and there's no, they don't have to tell you in advance that, hey, this is an addictive drug and you're going to have a hard time getting off of it, and there may be serious medical consequences you're not aware of. Well,
Right.
guess what? They're not going to tell you that. They just show a picture of a woman, lifting weights or doing her yoga, and advertise it as a pre-workout, and nothing can be further from the truth.
Right.
I've seen situations where people lose their house, lose their apartment, lose their cars, lose their job, lose their their friends and family. It's just sad, all because of their kratom use, and it just has a whole. I know a woman was living in her car last month because of her kratom use, and it's just sad. I'm glad that you guys are doing this podcast to grow the awareness of what can happen.
Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up today? I mean, thank you for everything you said. I think it was amazing.
To let people know that you can get off of it, and once you do, your life will expand, and you will get to really enjoy life, and it's just waiting there for you. And if you ever feel a need to join us at quittingkratom.org, or we're there Wednesdays and Saturdays. We have a Zoom. So thank you again, Krista. I really appreciate all your efforts in putting this podcast together.
Thanks, Fritz, for coming on and sharing everything. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Kratom in the headlines. Today, I've got an article from the News Tribune. It was published Wednesday, August 9th of this year, and written by Julia Marnin. The news article tells the story of a father. His name was Patrick Coyne. He lived in Castle Rock, Washington, and he was found by his wife unresponsive in his living room on June 28, 2020. His official cause of death was listed as the toxic effects of kratom by the Cowlitz County coroner. And the article goes on to say that a Cowlitz County jury has awarded the wife and children $2.5 million in damages after his wife filed a wrongful death lawsuit. Now, the jury found Society Botanicals LLC, which sold the kratom product Patrick used and does business as Kratom Divine, and company owner Wendy Rook liable in connection with his death. And the significant thing about this article is that this is the first jury verdict in a civil claim for damages against a kratom manufacturer or distributor in the United States. The article did say she had previously told McClatchy News her company had been selling the kratom product with no adverse reactions reported other than a couple of people vomiting. You're seeing more and more of this. That is the kratom in the headlines this week.
All right, everybody, this week we've got the resources of the week. I say resources because there's a lot of great kratom-specific meetings that have popped up that we wanted to highlight for everybody. So I think over the last couple weeks, I know in my episode I talked a little bit about some programs I used, and then Krista and Charlie have talked about 12-step and a few others, but there's some real Kratom specific meetings that if you want to check out or are looking to augment your program or just want to start a program, maybe one of these would be right for you. So Wednesdays and Saturdays, there's a Quitting Kratom specific meeting. And then on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, this is tied to the Quitting Kratom Support Facebook group. There is another online meeting available. And then we've had a guest or two that have already talked about Quitting Feel Free, which is a specific Kratom product. They've got their own meeting that they started out of a subreddit group that they spun off. That is on Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern Time. And then affiliated with the Dopey podcast, and that's Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So all these links will be provided in the show notes, and you can check them out. But if you're looking for a meeting to check out or want to connect with some other folks that are going through the same thing and on their way to recovering from Kratom, go ahead and check out one of those meetings.